here. Let's see here. All right, we're live, everyone. Shabbat Shalom, our brothers and sisters on YouTube, and those that will see this study eventually start being put on the other platforms that I have videos on, like Minds.com, MeWe, Tor Network. So anyway, so thank you for all who are joining in tonight. We are the Wakened by Yahuwah Assembly. I'm Brother Doug. I got my brother Joshua with me here. Our sisters Sadia and Marissa are with us. So we're going to be tackling a pretty interesting topic here. Usually this is brought up a lot from many different brothers and sisters that have asked me about this over the years, about the three main lights that are mentioned here in Genesis chapter 1, the luminaries that are mentioned. So what we're going to do is we're going to first start with Genesis 1:14 and 19, and then I have some other cross references from a document I had from a long ago we'll get into also for backup support on the interpretation I have here. Okay, so we're going to start in Genesis 1:14. I'm going to use the Brenton's English translation of the Septuagint. So here we go. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven." Notice how it says in the firmament of the heaven, not outer space. "To give light upon the earth, to divide between day and night, and let them be for signs, seasons, and for days and for years." Now, this is probably where people start messing up, especially you'll see all these different calendars on Facebook and stuff like that. Okay, first of all, he's not saying that all these things are for one light, okay, or that one light decides all these things like the seasons, days, and years and signs. Okay, he's saying that these lights, plural, are for seasons, signs, days, and years. So meaning that one of the lights would be for days, one of the lights would be for years, one of them would be for signs and seasons, okay? So just keep that in mind. It's using a plurality there in the language, okay, for those multiple purposes, okay? "And let them be for light in the firmament of heaven, so as to shine upon the earth," and it was so. "And Elohim made the two great lights," okay, "the greater light for regulating the day and the lesser light for regulating the night, the stars also." So let me explain this here. The stars are being separated from the lesser light. So by default, they can't be the lesser light. Okay, so the stars are ruled out. So if we use common sense, we know today, right, that there's three main lights in the sky. Okay, you got stars, the sun, and the moon. Now, I think even science has proved this, that the sun has a greater light than the moon, right? So that's the greater light. The moon has a lesser light or lesser illumination. Okay, so the moon would be the lesser light. And we're going to show later on in the study that we have some extra biblical support for that interpretation, by the way. So anyway, moving on here. So verse 17, "Elohim placed them in the firmament of the heavens so as to shine upon the earth and to regulate day and night." Obviously, the day and night would be the day would be the sun, night would be the moon and the stars. And we're going to get to that, how scripture literally says that in other places like Jeremiah and all that. So we're going to get to that. "And Elohim saw that it was two, and there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day." So this is important too in verse 19, because this is showing us when exactly the stars, the sun, and the moon were created. So if you're reading any other, extra biblical books that are telling you that these luminaries are made on a different day, then obviously that's a contradiction. Okay, so just FYI. All right, so anyway, so now we're going to be moving on to the actual document here. So I'm going to be going to some bullet points I have on this Google Docs document here. So
wait, Doug, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if the moon is the lesser light, why is it visible in the daytime?
Because technically it doesn't like, it doesn't come out like it doesn't wait until it's nighttime to come out. Like basically when the sun is setting is when the moon is rising. You're like kind of like you got one that's setting on the other side of the sky in the clouds, and then you got the moon rising almost simultaneously while the sun's setting. And I've seen it in the summertime where there's no clouds, you can actually see it. Where on one side, like say the sun is like setting on the west, the moon will be rising on the east at the same time. So what scripture is saying is that the moon regulates the night. It doesn't say that it's actually waiting for the night to come out. So if that makes any sense. So it's supposed to regulate the night, meaning it's supposed to give light for the nighttime. And so it's not, but it doesn't limit, scripture doesn't limit the moon that it can't come out until nighttime, if that makes any sense. Go ahead, Brother Joshua, you got your hand up.
To add to your point, if you are regulating something, you're not doing a very tube job of regulating something if that something is coming out before you. Meaning if the night is coming out before the moon rather than the moon coming out before the night, then the moon's not doing a very tube job.
Exactly. And to make another point, what we consider as night when night starts is not what the Bible would consider when night starts. Like I'll give you an example. When sunset happens, the night hours start when sunset happens. So technically, when sunset has already happened, it's already evening, right? So the evening hours have already started. So what we consider night and what the Bible considers night are two completely different things, because unfortunately we've been Greco-Romanized thinking that it has to be dark to be night, if that makes any sense. Because actually when it starts becoming dark, that's what you call twilight. It's already into the nighttime before it's getting dark. So technically, so that's another whole topic by itself. But what the Gregorian calendar considers nighttime is not what scripture would consider the start of nighttime. When it's dark, it's like already a couple of hours into the evening, basically when it's pitch dark. Because you got to understand too, sunset starts evening. So when the sun sets, that's like when evening starts. So give or take, you got like what, Mom? Like usually between sunset and complete darkness, how much time you got? Like an hour at least?
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, so you're at least 1 hour into the evening by the time it's dark. So just saying. Anyway, so just to explain that. So I got a couple bullet points here. So what is the lesser light? Genesis 1:16, specifically in the Septuagint, the Samaritan Torah, also agree that the stars are separate. They are a separate luminary from the light. The sun and the moon and stars all have different splendors or esteems, like different type of light, and are separated from one another. And we're going to go to a couple of cross references here to show you what I mean by this. So you got 1 Corinthians 15:41. We're going to go there first, and we'll be going to Isaiah after that. First, we're going to go to 1 Corinthians 15:41, where Paul is making a point to separate these three different luminaries. And so there is one esteem of the sun, another esteem of the moon, and another esteem of the stars. For one star differs from another star in esteem. Now, that's what I find interesting, is that these stars that are in a third category, within the category of stars, one star differs from another. That's kind of interesting. We'll get into that, why that's kind of interesting, if you know biblically what a star actually is. So that's kind of interesting to me. But we'll get into that later on. According to scripture, what I believe stars are actually referring to is not what we're taught in public school at all. So anyway, we'll be getting into that in a little bit, but I want to go to the next cross reference we have here, Isaiah 13:10. Okay, so Isaiah 13:10. So Let's see here. For the stars of heaven and Orion and all the armies of heaven shall not give their light, and shall be dark at sunrise. And the moon shall not give her light. So you see, the moon has a different light than the sun. Also, what I find interesting too, I don't know if you noticed this, Mom, but the stars are separate from constellations. They're not the same thing as constellations, because you see Orion is separate from the stars. You see how it says the stars of heaven and Orion? So they're two separate categories.
Mine says constellations.
Well, Orion is a constellation.
Right.
Orion is the name of a constellation. So it's saying
And they're constellations, yes.
so the stars and constellations. So they're different. So I remember being taught in public school, oh, stars are constellations. Not according to the Bible. So that's where you kind of got to throw out what you learned from public school when it comes to our cosmos. So let's see here. Jeremiah 31:35 talks about the stars are combined with the moon to give off light for the night. So technically, according to scripture here, the moon and the stars give light for the night. So let's see here. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 35. And I might have to use my Alexandrian Bible here, because in the Septuagint is chapter 38, by the way. If you have a physical Septuagint, it'll be like 7 chapters off. Okay. So let me see here. So Jeremiah 31:35. Thus says Yahuwah, who gives the sun for a light by day, the moon and the stars for a light by night, and makes a roaring in the sea so that the waves thereof roar. Yahuwah Almighty is his name. Now, by the way, Jeremiah 31:35 is not saying the stars and the moon are one singular light together. They're just saying they both give off light to regulate light for nighttime. It's not saying that they're the same light. Because I know some people have been deceived into this weird doctrine that the moon and the stars are together, one light. That's not what scripture is saying. Okay. I know a lot of people have misunderstood that verse and get this weird doctrine that the moon and the stars are together, the lesser light, which is not what scripture is saying. Okay, so now we're going to go to Psalms 136, verse 8. Okay, so we're going to go to Psalms 136, verse 8.
Brother Doug, the Bible does say that the moon is the lesser light.
Yeah, no. I know. What I'm saying is there's some people that have been deceived into thinking the moon and the stars are the same thing. That's what I was saying, that some people get deceived into thinking the stars are the lesser light and the stars and the moon together make up one lesser light. And that's what I was saying, was that the moon by itself is the lesser light, like it's separate from the stars. So I just wanted to clarify, because some people get deceived into this weird idea that the stars and the moon together make up one light, which wouldn't make any sense. Let's see here. So it says in Psalms 136, verse 8 here, it says, the sun to rule by day, for his mercy endures forever. The moon and the stars to rule the night, for his mercy endures forever. Okay. So another witness that the moon and the stars are ruling the night. Okay, let's see here. For added witness, we have in the book of Enoch verbatimly states the moon is the lesser light, like Sister Marissa just mentioned, not the stars. Okay. First Enoch 72:4 says the sun is the great light or greater light. First Enoch 73 verse 1 equates the moon as the smaller light or lesser light. Okay, so Joel chapter 2, verse 10, we're now going to go to. So Joel chapter 2, verse 10, where it says the stars of themselves have their own light. Talking about the stars will withdraw their shining at Messiah's return. So, okay, so let's see here. Joel 2:10. Joel chapter 2, verse 10. Before the earth shall be confounded, and the sky shall be shaken, meaning the heavens shall be shaken, the sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their light. Okay, so the stars withdrawing their light. Okay, let's see here. All right, now we're going to move on to Joel chapter 3, verse 15. Again, another instance talking about the stars withdrawing their shining. Okay, so Joel chapter 3, verse 15. Let's see here. Come on, eSword, you're killing me here. You're really killing me here, eSword. Come on. Wow, what is going on here, man? All right, here we go. Joel 3:15. After I read this verse, I'll let Brother Joshua chime in. I see he's got his hand up, so let me just read this verse, and I'll get to Brother Joshua here. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their light. So again, the stars have their own light. Okay. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
What is the context of, because I'm familiar, I know the verse, but I've been a while since I've read it in context. What's the context of why are they withdrawing their light?
Oh, this is talking about the day of Yahuwah. This is the day. This is the day of his wrath, the day of his vengeance on the wicked. So the reason they're withdrawing their light, I would think, is probably because it's supposed to be a sign of his second coming, really, to give a short, quick, to the point answer. But I think it's also to kind of signify that it's a day of wrath, that people are supposed to be in fear, because you got the prior verses talking about he's going to tread the grapes, kind of like how Genesis 49 talks about it. Yeah, so this is definitely the day of his second coming, would be the context. So yeah, that seems to be why he's referring this, and gives us a clue to when the second coming would be coming. This stuff would have to precede it. Then you got Acts 27, Paul again, I think, or maybe it's Stephen writing this. Acts 27:20, sun and the stars are two different luminaries. Okay. The reason I'm making a point of this is because we've been taught in public school systems that the sun is a star, supposedly, that the sun is categorized as a star, but Scripture says differently. Okay, let's see here.
That's also taught in college. That's what I was told when I was in college in one of my classes, that the star and the moon, that the moon and the moon and the sun were stars.
Yeah, heliocentrism. There's a lot of problems with that. And really, that stuff wasn't taught really in schools until you really had the Catholic Church promoting Galileo's, I think that's the scientist's name, Galileo's theories on heliocentrism, that the universe is centered around the sun instead of the earth and all that. That's when that garbage started. But as you see from Scripture is making a point to separate the sun and the stars. But neither sun nor stars appearing for many days, no small tempest lying upon us. All expectation of our being saved was finally taken away. So the context here is obviously talking about the eternal salvation that Yahushua gives with his burial, death, burial, and resurrection. So they're allegorically using this language, but as you can see here, even in allegorical language, physical things like the sun and the stars are separated as two different things. And we're going to get, by the end of this study, I'm going to tell you guys what I believe Scripture says stars actually are, and how you can know for a fact stars are not. The sun cannot be a star. Neither can the moon be a star. So Revelations 8:12, the sun and moon and stars are all different luminaries. So Revelations chapter 8, verse 12 is going to be the next one. We got a couple from Revelations, actually. So Revelations 8:12 we'll start at. By the way, I'm reading from like a Greek Orthodox Bible, pretty much. It's the Alexandrian Bible. So it's Greek Orthodox Christians would probably be familiar with this translation. So here we go. Let me see here. Okay. And the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, that the third part of them might be darkened, and the day might not shine for the third part of it, and night likewise. So it seems like Revelations 8 chronologically would be talking about the same time period as his second coming, if I'm not mistaken. So same event as Joel 2 and 3. Okay, so, but again, you see the sun, moon, and stars are all separate luminaries that they're talking about and making separation between those three. So now we're going to go to Revelation chapter 12, verse 4. Revelations chapter 12, verse 4, which this is the famous sign in the stars, or sign in the sky everyone knows about here. Okay, see here. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven. Now, to me, this is like a light bulb moment. If you weren't kind of putting it together what stars are, what did Satan take with him on when he fell from heaven?
Third
No, but a third of what?
of the angels.
Yep. So that means stars are angels. Okay. So and he cast them to the earth, and the dragon stood before the woman that was about to be delivered. When she brought forth her child, he might devour it. And I know you might be saying, well, Doug, how do you know it doesn't really say angels, it says stars? Well, I'm going to show you why I know, because Revelations gives us a definition of what a star is in prophecy. So I'm going to go to Revelations chapter 1 real quick and show you guys something cool. Okay. Literally verbatimly tells you what a star is. Okay. So it says right here, the mystery of the seven stars that you saw in my right hand, and the seven golden candlesticks, the seven stars. Now, I don't like how it says and. It shouldn't say and there. I don't know why they messed that up with that translation. I don't like it when they do that. They start improvising too much. Yeah, here we go. ESV got it right here. The seven stars are the seven angels of these seven assemblies. And the seven lampstands are the seven assemblies. So this messenger is telling John literally what a star is. Go figure, an angel itself is telling him. So I find that interesting. Also, if you're saying, oh, I'm not convinced, Doug, I need a second or third witness. Okay, just hold on a sec. I'm about to go to the book of Job here to show you something cool here. Job chapter 38. Okay. Now, you can't really see this in the Masoretic because they translated his sons, I think is how they have it, all my sons praised me. Okay, so in the Septuagint here it says, when the stars were made, all my angels praised me with a loud voice. So in the context of this verse, what it's saying is when he made the stars, when he made the angels, they praised him with their voice. Okay, so obviously it's equating angels with stars. The only difference in the Masoretic is it says the sons of Elohim, which, by the way, the Septuagint, almost 100% of the time, the Septuagint always translates B'nai Elohim as angels. It's like one and the same. Okay. So
Doug, are you saying all angels are stars?
yeah, that stars is like the term star is like an idiom for angels or heavenly messengers. They're also known as the host of heaven. In scripture, there's many different titles are given, sons of Elohim. But the majority of the time when stars are mentioned, it's like a type. I wouldn't say a title. It's more like an allegorical phrase for angels.
So does that apply to the cherubim that were put in the Garden of Eden and all that stuff?
Yeah, I would say they're stars. They're certain class of stars, I would say. And I think Enoch also talks about that there's leaders of the stars. Certain class of angels are leaders of them. So you have the cherubim and the seraphim. They would probably be the leaders. They would be like, there's different classes of angels. You got I think Enoch even talks about Ophanim is one of them. There's like different classes of stars. So yeah, but from what I've seen in scripture, it seems to be stars are equated with angels. Another reference would be from Jude, just real quick. Jude equates a fallen angel as a wandering star here. So let's see here. It says Jude 1:6 here says, and the angels which kept not their first estate, which, by the way, those that are still not convinced about the angel belief of Genesis 6, you might want to look at this verse from Jude, because Jude is definitely referencing Genesis 6 here. Okay, and the angels which kept not their first estate, meaning they didn't stay in heaven, but they left their own habitation, meaning they've left their bodies, he has reserved in eternal chains under darkness unto the judgment of the great day, even as Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, so he's comparing them to Sodom and Gomorrah, and the cities round about them in like manner, giving themselves over to whoredom and going after strange flesh, are set forth an example, suffering vengeance of eternal fire. Then he even goes on, it kind of compares wicked men to them. These are spots in your feasts. Here we go. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. What's interesting about this phrase, wandering star, if you actually look the etymology of the word planet goes back to the Greek word planetes, which actually means wanderer. So what they call planets today are wandering stars, and they're fallen angels according to scripture, which is kind of interesting because when you look at most of the planets, they're named after Greek and Roman pagan gods. So I kind of find it interesting. You got Mars, you got Jupiter, you got Uranus, which is also, isn't Uranus Neptune? Or no. Neptune's a separate one, right? So Neptune would have been Poseidon. You have Jupiter, which was Zeus in the Greek religion. So I kind of find it kind of interesting that they just so happen to name these planets after pagan deities. That most likely, according to some researchers, might have been the actual names that the Watchers gave themselves for humans to worship them. Is the theory about the pre-flood world, is that they came down and wanted humankind to worship them instead of the creator. So you have these wandering stars that all of a sudden now have these names that certain religions gave them. And so I just find that kind of interesting. But to me, it's pretty obvious. If you look at the book of Jude here, Jude seems to be equating wandering stars with the angels that actually sinned in Genesis 6. So
Doug, the stars that we see at night in the sky, what is that? I mean, we can see the stars. Depending on the elevation that you're in, you can see a bunch of stars. Are those fallen angels?
Well, I believe that the stars in generals are angels, good or bad. I would say that shooting stars more or less could be fallen angels. And there's a verse actually in Revelations that would kind of hint to that. The verse that talks about wormwood. There's a star that fell from heaven that's called wormwood. Here, a star fell from heaven.
But Doug, what about the stars that we can see at night in the sky?
I would say those are the Tob angels. Those would be Yahuwah's angels. Also, I noticed that the usually a sign of a fallen angel is that it would be a star that would wander from its course. The book of Enoch talks about that Yahuwah, when he made the angels, when he made the stars, he gave them a specific point in the firmament of the sky to stay at. But fallen angels went out of their course.
Right,
they
right.
left their habitation, as Jude says. But this is the verse I'm referring to here, Revelations 8:10-11. And then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch. And it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the stars became wormwood, and many men died from the water because it was made bitter. Okay, so... And if you want to know more about, I have tons of other witnesses about stars being called angels, even in the book of Enoch. I would recommend you guys check out our 2-part study that our fellowship already did like a year or so ago. It's called What Are Stars Exactly? And it goes like through so many witnesses, canonical and extra canonical scripture. There's many witnesses for this concept. The book of Enoch makes it very clear that that's what stars are. It tells you that stars are angels. So I would really recommend you look more into that. That's something you're interested in. But I want to go back to here. We haven't read Ezekiel 32:7. Ezekiel 32:7 is going to talk about how the sun and the moon and the stars are separate. Before I do that, though, Brother Joshua, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Yeah, so going back to Revelations 1, I'm in a full agreement with like Revelations 12:4, Jude 1, and all the other examples. However, Revelations 1, I'm not 100% certain on that one, just because he's having him write the letters to the 7 Malachim, or the 7 messengers of the assembly. Is there not any possible way that just that one part is just allegorical? Because he's writing, I don't see why he would be writing to Malachim unless he's referring to the leaders of the assembly, that they would become stars eventually. Like we become stars.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. I could see that as, yeah, that's probably allegorical. Yeah, I got you there. I'll take that correction there. Yeah, it's probably allegorical in that one instance.
But not only that, Doug, what about in Genesis 1:14? It talks about the sun, the moon, and the stars that are going to determine the times and times. So I don't understand how stars can be angels
because that's them being created on the 4th day. There's no other scripture that says when they were created. If they're not stars, sis, then we have the angels never mentioned when they're created, and there's only 6 days of creation. So to me it makes perfect sense that they're angels. They're created on the 4th day with the sun and the moon.
I thought they were already created before that.
No, there's no scripture that says that. That's Jewish tradition. The luminaries, there's only 1 day in 6 days of creation where they're created. There's only 1 day. The luminaries are all created on day 4, as we just read. That's all the luminaries right there. They're all created on the same day. So if they're not created on the 4th day, then when would they be created? Because they're not created on the day 5. They're not created on day 6. They're not created on day 1 to 3. The only choice you have is that they're created on day 4. The only reason the Jews believe that they were created like before the 6 days of creation, mainly, I hate to say it, is a preconceived bias. And I'll explain this, because they have a doctrine in mainstream Judaism today that they believe the angels are co-creators, that's heretical. It's not true. That's the only reason they believe that it's pre 6 days of creation.
Yeah.
That's the only reason. They want to take Yahusha out of the picture.
Because it fits in.
It's really, that's the only reason. But as far as when they would have been created, we only have that verse mentioning when the luminaries are created. That's all the luminaries mentioned in that verse. So if they're not angels, then we have a big problem in the Bible, because in the Bible it's not mentioning when they're being created. And I seriously doubt Yahuwah would leave out when angels are created when he's mentioning everything else. So to me, it makes perfect sense. And even besides that, I just showed you multiple verses where it literally calls them angels, not just Revelations 1, but you got Satan took 1/3 of the stars. We know that that's referring to angels in Revelations 12. It's literally referring to stars as angels there allegorically. Job 38 is calling his sons stars. It's calling the sons of Elohim stars. So there's multiple witnesses of this in canon and out of canon, with the book of Enoch universally calling them angels. So I mean, there's multiple witnesses of this. I think it's very obvious that they're angels. I mean, there's clues all over the fact that I think it's even funny that these Hollywood people, they got to have their stars and all that, they got to have their little star on the boulevard. The fact that even devil worshipers use a pentagram, a star.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean,
they call themselves stars instead of like celebrity. They call themselves stars. But I don't understand. I honestly don't understand that concept that a star is an angel. I just I know you read the scripture, but I don't know. I just don't see it.
I would say, sis, just pray about it. I think it's pretty obvious to me, though. It says stars are angels multiple times in the canon. I mean, we got to believe Yahuwah at his word. What we got to get out of us is this NASA garbage that public schools have taught us. That's the problem. We got this brainwashing from public school. The fact of the matter is, though, stars universally in ancient cultures, they understood this concept. They understood what stars were. They're not balls of gas. I think it's very obvious. Another obvious reason I believe stars are angels, I'll show you this real quick. This is another witness here from the book of Judges. I've used this a lot to show people that stars can be what we've been told they are, because they're fighting. They fight. Okay. The only luminaries I know that fight in scripture are angels, as far as I've seen. So it says here, the stars from heaven, Judges 5:20, the stars from heaven set themselves in array. They set themselves to fight with Sisera out of their paths. So, and by the way, we haven't even gotten to the rest of this stuff where it equates with stars with the host of heaven. There's certain verses in scripture where stars and the hosts of heaven are coupled together as the same thing.
Right, but here in verse 14 in chapter 1 of Genesis, it says, and let them be for signs and appointed times and for days and years. He's talking about the Shamayim. He's talking about so
they're in the Shamayim. Says, I don't see no contradiction there. That's flowing perfect with what I'm saying. They are literally the same.
So the angels are assigned to determine the signs and the appointed times.
They're assigned to certain courses in the heaven as signs. If you read the book of Enoch, it talks about how they got certain courses in the sky in the firmament. They're placed in the firmament. They got certain courses that they must stay in. They got stations in the sky they must stay in. And another thing we got to understand, with verse 14 says, not one luminary is assigned to all those purposes. That's what you got to understand. They are not assigned to seasons. The moon is assigned to season. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. This is why it's important to understand you can't assign one luminary to all those purposes. You got to understand that each luminary has its own purpose. I'm going to show you this real quick to help you understand this. So if we go to Psalms here, I'm going to show you real quick. It says the moon, he made the moon for times, okay? By the way, the Hebrew word there is feasts or appointed times, okay? So the stars were not made for the sea. This is why you have to understand that he's talking about multiple luminaries when he gives all those different things that it's supposed to be for. It's not all of them for one luminary. Okay, so it says he made the moon to mark the seasons. The seasons have nothing to do with the stars or the sun. It's the moon. Mm-hmm. And the sun knows when to set. So this is what we have to understand about Genesis 1:14. That's why I say we got to take the whole counsel of Scripture. We got to match Genesis 1:14 with what Psalms 104:19 says to understand this completely. Okay, so it's not saying that the stars are marking the seasons, days, and years. From what me and Joshua have studied, and feel free to chime in, Brother Joshua, I believe the stars, the angels, were made to mark the years in the sky, to tell.
That's definitely a possibility. However, another possibility is that because you see it says that, mark the for signs, for Moedim or seasons, for the times and the years. We know that the sun, obviously we both the moon we have for the Moedim, we have the sun for its purpose. Is it possible that the stars are for what is the Hebrew word there for signs?
I don't know. It could be prophetic too. I'm trying to think, but from what I've seen too, the stars could have something to do with
prophetic signs.
Yeah, prophetic.
Kind of like signs. You have in one of the Besorah accounts, you have the wise men or the sorcerers or diviners or whatever you want to call them from the east. They see Yahusha's star and they follow the star. So that was like a sign. It was a prophetic sign.
Yeah,
so that's another possibility.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was hinting at. Yeah, what you touched on is kind of what I was hinting at. I think signs in that context would be like prophetic signs for the stars, for the angels. I believe the seasons alone are the moon, like Psalms 104 says. So the moon only is for seasons. Now, for days, to understand what days would be referring to, that's the sun solely, because evening to evening, sunset to sunset, it's the sun. So like, this is what I was trying to explain here, is that when you look at this verse 14, out of the three luminaries, each luminary has its own purpose. It's not that all the purposes go to one luminary. That's kind of what I was trying to explain. So I think what people get confused with is they think that one luminary is going to be given for all those three things. And I think that's what's confusing people. That he says, let there be lights, plural, right? So plural, meaning that there's multiple lights he's talking about in verse 14. Yep, go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I think with the years, something that came to mind, I think one of the reasons we may have been misunderstanding that is just trying to find how they mark the years. Like, is it year 1? Is it year 2? Is it year 3? But if you look at it in the sense of the sun and the moon mark the year, like meaning the sun, when you have equal amounts time of sunlight in the day and equal amounts of moonlight, the sun, the same amount of light, the vernal equinox, pretty much. If you look at it in that context, then it does mark the year. Because we know how to count the new year by the vernal equinox and the following new moon. And then you have both the moon and the sun marking the year or the start of the year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, well, the sun would actually end the year with the vernal equinox. So yeah, to your point, the sun would be marking the last day of the previous year. And then the moon is starting the month, which, seasons. So, because you got new moons as a type of moedim. So to your point, the moon would start the first day of that next year. So yeah, technically you could have all three marking the years in that type of sense. But I believe as far as you definitely got a luminary that basically decides the days, how to mark the days. And then you have a luminary that marks the seasons. And then, and then you have at least one luminary to mark the years, or possibly, like you said, multiple ones to mark the years. So I think that's the best way to interpret what Genesis 1:14 is literally saying. Because I know some people, they take one luminary to do all three of these purposes, which doesn't make any sense to me. So I know there's a lot of lunar Sabbath people out there, and I think that's what's happening is people are misunderstanding this verse from Genesis 1:14 is what's going on. But like I said, I know that it's a hard concept to understand that stars are angels. I would really recommend you checking out those videos just to see the scriptures for yourself, to look up and read for yourself. And if it's still something like not fathomable at the moment, I would just say, take it up to Yahuwah, pray about it. All I know is I see a universal message through scripture that's what stars actually are, rather than what we've been taught. Anyway, so if anyone's interested, I'll leave links for the videos, and I'll even give you links for the Google Docs. It was a part 2 study. I have both Google Docs that I can give anyone that wants to study it out for themselves. I don't want you to take my word for it. So, but anyway, I do want to move on here because we do have some other scriptures to go through with this lesser light study. So let me just get back to here. Let me see here. I'm trying to see which. Yeah, so let me see here. Okay. Just get back here. I know my internet's not working too well right now. Google Docs. Okay, so what is a lesser light? I think we were halfway through. We were about, I think we got past through the Enoch stuff, Jet Acts, Revelations 8:12, Ezekiel 32:7. Okay, Isaiah 60:19 says, "And you shall no more have the sun for a light by day, nor shall the rising of the moon lighten your night, but Yahuwah shall be your eternal light, and Elohim your esteem." So that's from the Septuagint there of Isaiah chapter 60, verse 19. As you can see here, the sun and the moon, completely separate luminaries. Okay, and there's going to be no need for them when the new heaven, new earth come. And I think that's about it. So that was actually a little bit shorter than I had expected. So maybe we could go through a couple of scriptures for the what are stars exactly. I mean, I don't want to rehash a whole big study of it, but I'll just give you guys a couple of cross references to look up for yourselves. Like I said, there's 2 parts to this study, actually. Okay, so this is, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Brother Joshua. I see you got your hand up.
I just found a witness to 2 stars being for prophetic signs. The Greek word in Genesis is G4592, Simeon, meaning like sign, token, wonder. Then when you look in Isaiah 7:14, where Yahuwah is saying, "Behold, I will give you a sign: the virgin shall conceive in the womb." The same word for sign is 4592, Simeon. Miracle, sign, token, wonder. And then you have the star. You can correlate that with the star appearing to the wise men.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I didn't even that. Nice. So, like Brother Joshua said before, you could make the case Revelations 1:20 is allegorical, but there's other scriptures here that indicate that literally it's also literal language. Ezekiel 32:8 calls stars bodies that give light. Let's see here, Job 38:7, which I mentioned before, Judges 5:20, which I mentioned before. Let's see. It talks about all the stars will bow to Joseph in a prophecy, in a dream. So it's talking about stars bowing to him. To me, that definitely indicates that's referring to angels. A gas planet cannot bow. Okay. Deuteronomy 4:19, stars are being equated with the armies of heaven or the host of heaven. Isaiah 13:10, armies of heaven coupled with the stars. Isaiah 34:4, the stars, aka the armies of heaven, will fall to the earth. Okay, I don't know. If stars are what we've been told, then we got a huge problem in prophecy then, because all the stars are going to fall to the earth. Just saying. Joel 2:10 shows stars having their own light or brightness. We already talked about that. Got a couple witnesses. Let's see here. Zephaniah 1:5-6, 2 Peter 2:4, referring to the same event as Jude 1:6. Okay, Job 22:12. Stars are tall. It compares to stars having almost like a height. And that's just part one. So of that study we did a while ago. Part two, okay, you got, let's see here. You guys see if there's this is pretty much a rehash. I mean, there's a couple other verses here. You got Psalms 147:4. Let's see here. Revelations 9:1-5. Talks about a star was given in a pit, was giving a key to the bottomless pit. Revelations 21:23, Matthew 24:29, and also verse 32. Revelation 6:13, you can look up for yourselves. Revelations 22:5. Let's see, Nehemiah 9:6, Amos 5:8. I got a couple from Enoch, also the ones from Enoch I was referring to before. First Enoch chapter 78 verse 3, you can check that one for yourself. First Enoch 18 verse 2. Okay. So anyway, so I just want to thank you for everyone that's joined us. I hope at the least you've gotten some clarity about what the purpose for each luminary is, from Genesis 1:14 to 1:19, because that was the original purpose of this study, really was just to focus on that. I apologize if I went a little bit on a rabbit trail there, but I just kind of wanted to explain, just for those that have not looked into it, what stars actually are according to scripture. So anyway, I don't know, Brother Joshua, if you got anything else to add before we close it out.
No. I think it says old hand.
Oh, okay. My bad. I didn't know for sure. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your Sabbath, brothers and sisters. Shabbat shalom.